we're at the boat today and we are looking at the alternator to see if we can figure out why it's not charging, or if it is charging currently. Because when we did the survey back a few weeks ago, a couple months ago when we bought the boat, the surveyor said the alternator wasn't charging. So of course they're not going to diagnose and tell you why it's not charging. They're just going to say it's not charging, and then you have to figure that out. Or hire someone to figure that out. But of course I'm going to do everything myself. I'm not going to hire anyone to do this. It's simple enough. I can figure it out myself. So we're going to see why it's not charging. What I noticed after he said that was there was a fuse coming from the alternator to the voltage regulator that was burnt out. So I replaced the fuse, and it was a 10 amp fuse, and I saw some things online that people who had problems with the same thing said that sometimes that fuse would blow when they had something on, like the air conditioner or the refrigerator that was drawing a lot of power, or both of them together. That sometimes that fuse would blow, and then the company who makes the alternator would recommend that they up the fuse to like a higher amperage, like a 15 amp fuse or something like that. So I replaced it with what was in there, 10 amp fuse or what's called for. So we'll see today if the alternator is charging. And we'll take a look at it right here. You can see there's the alternator right there. That thing right there, the white thing. And it is a Balmar alternator. It's a high output alternator. It's not the original one that was on this engine. So that may be part of the problem, but we'll take a look at it and we'll see what's going on. Alright, so here's how the test is going. So I tested the batteries before we started to see what the voltage was. So the voltage was like around a little over 12 volts, and they've been charged, so that's to be expected that they would be like around 12 volts. What should happen is when I start the engine, the alternator should be turned on and then charging the battery, so it should go up to somewhere around 13 volts or so when the RPMs of the motor is up, or the engine, and that's not happening. So the engine's on, alternator's spinning, and the battery voltage is still like a little over 12 volts. So there's not really any change, which means that the alternator's not charging the battery. So I'm going to go through. First thing I've got to do, I guess, is check all the connections. Make sure that everything is, there's no corrosion on any of the connections. And then check all those fuses. I know there are at least 2 fuses in that system that need to be checked. So I'll check those, clean everything up, try it again, and see if it works then. Here's an update on the testing. So right here is the alternator, or the voltage regulator that hooks up to the alternator. So from the alternator has 4 wires that comes out of it. Has a ground wire, a positive wire, and then 2 other wires that plug in here. And what was happening is I have these 10 amp fuses, and a 10 amp fuse goes between this red wire here to the back of the alternator. So that fuse was blowing, and I wasn't sure exactly when it was blowing. It was blown when I started the engine a minute ago, and so what I did was I shut the engine off. It wasn't charging any of the batteries, and I went back and looked at the fuse, and the fuse was blown again. So I went ahead and shut the engine off, turned the power, or turned the batteries off, and changed the fuse, turned it on, and then looked at the fuse again, and the fuse was instantly blown. So as soon as I turned the power on, it was blowing this fuse. So I have a little handy-dandy troubleshooting guide here, and of course it's telling you to measure the voltage across these different pins, and you're supposed to get 2 volts when you go from ground to red wire, and 0 volts when you go to ground to the other 2 wires. And I was getting 0 volts all around. And it said if you get something that deviates from what they just said in the manual, call Balmar that makes this alternator and the regulator here. So I gave them, first I looked it up online, and some other people have that same problem, that 10 amp fuse blowing, and people are giving different reasons, and basically it boiled down to there's probably something wrong with this, something wrong with the regulator. So I called Balmar. They had a little phone number in their guide, really helpful. You call them up, and I told him, I said what I had, this MC512, and he says that hasn't been made in like 20 years, and he didn't know much about it. But I described the fuse situation, and he said, yeah, most likely it is this regulator that needs replaced. And of course, they no longer make this one. They make another one, I think he said the ARS5, which is probably the rough equivalent of this one. And he said, so I'd have to get a new regulator to replace this one. All right, so update on the voltage regulator. So this is the one I took out, the one that was bad. I called Balmar, and they said that it was most likely, based on my symptoms, that this needed replaced. So I went out and I bought the new one in stock at West Marine. Had one left. The old one I had was the MC512, and of course the guy there told me that he hasn't seen one of those around in 20 years, so that's kind of old. This is the new replacement for that, the ARS5H, and the H indicates that it comes with the wiring harness, so it's the ARS5 with the wiring harness. So I pulled out the old wiring harness just to put the new one in, since it had a little bit of different, a couple different wires on there, like an extra ground that is not in, that the ARS5 does not need. So this came out, the Balmar Max Charge and the ARS5H went in, and I tried it, fired up the engine. It actually is programmable. So I was able to program it so it charges for the AGM batteries that I have, which I think I have that programmed properly. It looked like it accepted the program, so it looked like it was working. So I fired the engine up, and it started charging all the batteries. So I think that was a success. Next repair is that I have to do. They're going to do right now is with the head. It's electric head, and it has a solenoid. Looks like this, and I don't know how it happened. If it was when the place that did the winterization, the place I bought it from, when they did the winterization, if maybe they didn't get all the water out of this, because there was a big crack right in the bottom here. So maybe over the winter, I thought maybe it froze and cracked that. This is just a plastic housing. So I was hoping that I could find just this piece on the bottom, because it bolts right off there. And so I found the part number on the side of here, and it's made by a place called GC Valves. But when you look this up, it's Raritan. They're the ones who make the head. Raritan sells this solenoid for $150 for this replacement, just to replace this one cracked piece of plastic. They wanted to charge $150 for it. So instead of doing that, I put the part number in. I went to GC Valves. They directed me to a place called Sunbury Controls in Pennsylvania that sells these for other applications besides boats, and it was only 90 some bucks there. So I think with tax it was about a little over $100. And so I have the new valve, so that has to go in, and I'll show you where that goes. In here in the head, we'll come on in, and you can see right here I'm sitting on the head there, and over to the side right here there's this little hose coming out. And because this is a freshwater head, so this hose here goes directly to the water, into the water tank, so the fresh water supply. And then when you push the button here to flush the head, it opens this valve and lets water flow through it. So the water goes in to the top of the head, and then the motor comes on at the bottom of the head down there, and it sucks all the waste out. So fresh water goes in and then sucks all the waste out, and it goes into the holding tank. So so I have to replace this valve today. I just got it in the mail over the week. So I want to replace that. It's real easy. All right, so here we go. The fix is done. So here's what I got. Solenoid here. And it had that, originally it has the green wire. For some reason, the green wire they had cut off all the way up here, and they packed a bunch of silicone in there. What I did instead is I ran the green wire. It's not being used. So I ran it down here into some, you can see that one right there, into some heat shrink with the black wire, and just closed off the end before I put it in the heat shrink. So it's in the heat shrink. I put a little drip loop in here because this does get water. I mean, this the shower is in here, so this gets water in here. So I put a little drip loop, covered the terminals up here, and then it works. So the water's on, the pressure's on. The button is here. So when you push the button for the head, and then this, so that opens up, lets water, comes into the top here, and then goes into the bottom, and then the motor over there kicks on and takes the wastewater out. So that project is complete. All right, we got the boat out today. Yesterday is when I did the alternator repair, actually the voltage regulator repair, and as I mentioned, I think that it worked perfectly. The only other problem that popped up as a result of that is the tachometer has dropped off. So those can be related to the alternator, because sometimes the tachometer reads off the alternator, but that isn't the case on this boat. It actually does have a sender that's on the flywheel, but I think what's happening is with the alternator charging, apparently what happens is once it gets the batteries to the level they're supposed to be at, it cuts off the power that it sends to all to other places like the sender, or the tachometer sender. So I think maybe that's what's happening. I took the terminals off the sender and cleaned those up, hoping maybe that would do something to it, but it didn't. It doesn't seem to have done anything. So I'm not sure what to figure out what that's all about, but as of now, the tachometer just isn't working. So we left the dock for the first time today, and I'll back up and say when I put the boat in, I backed in perfectly and didn't hit a single piling going in, because I was able to pull in and just back straight in. Going out is a different story. So going out, the boat is hard to turn to the left and right when you're moving slow because it has a full keel. So I was trying to come out of the slip and turn left, and of course there's not enough room to do that, so it took about like a 23-point turn to try to get it to go left, and eventually I gave up and decided to try to back out. So I got that fairly easily, was able to get it to back out instead of trying to make the hard left. And as we were backing out, we just kept drifting closer and closer to the dock. Would have been on the starboard side of the boat as we were backing out, and of course the aft port side of the boat caught one of the pilings, and it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was a big bump, but I think we probably had worse. Nothing was damaged, so but yeah, so that was a little drama getting out of the marina. And the marina has some tight spots. It's known for having tight fairways, and this boat does not like to turn quickly. So we'll see when we go back in how that goes, but right now we're just sitting here. We just went right outside of Annapolis, Spa Creek, in the Severn River. We're anchored right outside the Naval Academy. So the Naval Academy is right over that way, and Spa Creek is over that way from where we're sitting. And the winds right now, we got about 10 knot winds right now. We only have one sail though, because our other sails we ordered haven't come in yet. So we have the main, and what we may try to do here in a little bit is we just stopped for lunch. We'll pull the anchor up, see make sure the windlass works and all that, and then maybe throw up the main and just kind of air that out and get some of the dirt out of it, because I saw a bird nest in there yesterday. So so we'll do that here in a little bit, throw the sail up and see if we can move a little bit here in this area here. We're not going too far today though, just hanging out right here in the right outside Annapolis. So like I said, we're out here anchored, and we're right outside Annapolis, right at the edge of the anchorage here. And you can see like the waves are like killer because there are tons of power boats coming in and out and causing all the waves. So we just had a couple that just went by, and of course they wait until right till you get up to the no wake zone to come down off a plane and create all kinds of waves rolling through the anchorage. So that's what's happening right now. We're rocking and rolling out here. All right, now we got the mainsail up, and we're moving along. Not the fastest because we only have one sail right now, but we are moving. So there's the sail up, and we're moving along slowly. Alright, so it is Sunday. We just got back. It was a little harder getting into the slip than the last time I did it because we had like a pretty stiff wind coming out of the slip. So it was kind of difficult in the tight space to get the boat to turn the way we wanted to and get it into the slip. But we got it in without any major bumps. Actually, I don't think we actually hit anything, did we? Yeah, we didn't actually hit anything coming in. But it was just took a lot of back and forth to try to get it to go in, and that didn't work. But eventually we got it, and had a couple of people help us on the dock, pull us in. But other than that, it worked out well. The boat sailed great. We only have one sail, like you saw, the main. We don't have the staysail or the Genoa or jib up there yet. Hopefully that comes this week. We ordered them from North Sails back in January, February. They said it would be end of March. Then they said it'd be end of April. And then when I called them this last week, they said they were done, ready to ship. So they said 2 days to ship. I just have to go make the final payment for them, which I'm not sure they're actually waiting for that or not. But I have to make the final payment on Monday, and then they should ship them after that. So that's about all that we did this weekend. We got quite a lot done, I think. We did the voltage regulator, got that in. We fixed the head. Some other little things here and there. Went out for a brief sail, back and forth, just to get the mainsail up, see how it worked. And everything seems to have worked okay so far. So next week, hopefully by next week we'll have both the sails, so we'll be working on getting those hooked up. They need new sheets because I think the sheets I have might not be long enough. I'm not sure if they went to the original jib and staysail that we had here, plus some little shackles here and there that it's missing, so we got to get those on there. So next weekend it's going to be about getting those sails back, everything connected back up, and maybe try to take it out again and see if we can get all of the sails up with wind in them. And that is all for today. Signing off from Island Thistle. Have a good one.